All right, let's dive right into the echo chamber. Think about language learning for a second. Usually we treat it as a purely mental exercise, right? We stare at textbooks, silently read flashcards, and try to memorize grammar rules. But today, in this explainer, we're completely reframing all of that. What if we approach language not as a math problem, but as a physical, athletic pursuit? We're going to explore a profoundly effective technique known as the shadowing method. It's not just about hearing the language, it is about physical replication. You're literally training your mouth to move in perfect lockstep with a master track.
You know how it usually goes. We rely on passive listening. An audio track plays, the sound goes into your ear, and, well, it just kind of stays there. It's a static, one-way street. But shadowing, which is a technique formalized by the polyglot professor Alexander Argelis, completely flips that dynamic into an active, continuous output loop. You are acting as a verbal echo. You don't pause to analyze the grammar, you just listen and repeat simultaneously, matching the exact rhythm and intonation. You're creating this dynamic, totally unbreakable loop between your ear and your mouth.
And look, this isn't just some neat internet trick. It is deeply rooted in applied linguistics. When we peel back the science behind this echo chamber, a really fascinating pattern emerges. Processing information through multiple sensory channels at exactly the same time transfers that data straight into your long-term memory. Imitative theory, from researchers like Skinner and Bandura, shows us that mimicry is exactly how we naturally acquired our very first language as kids. Combine that with Krashen's input hypothesis and Swain's output hypothesis, which basically prove that real-time vocalization accelerates your reflexes, and you arrive at the real magic, cognitive load theory. By engaging your hearing and speaking channels simultaneously, you are creating an absolute powerhouse for memory retention.
But that begs a pretty big question, doesn't it? Have you ever tried to mimic a native speaker and found that certain sounds just feel physically impossible? Your tongue gets tied in knots, you stumble, and honestly, you feel a bit ridiculous. Well, the fascinating realization here is that your mouth muscles simply haven't been trained for those specific movements yet. If you grow up speaking Spanish or Portuguese or French, your articulators have spent years practicing one specific set of movements. English requires an entirely different athletic stance.
So let's actually step inside the mouth gym for a second and run some physical drills, because mastering an accent is pure muscle memory. First up, we've got lip rounds. This is where you aggressively push your lips forward tightly for that English W sound. Next, tongue trip taps. You literally have to train your tongue to precisely hit the ridge behind your teeth for your T, D, N, and L sounds. Then we have the H stretches, pushing the tongue straight between the teeth, which is a movement a lot of languages just avoid entirely. And finally, jaw drops. You have to physically drop your jaw much lower to get that flat ah sound in cat. If you don't physically train these muscles, your mouth is just going to default back to its native habits. And doing this physical training reveals something absolutely beautiful. We aren't just learning isolated words, we're chasing the melody. Linguists call these elements suprasegmentals. It sounds fancy, but it just means the prosodic features of speech: the rhythm, the word stress, the rising and falling intonation, and the pacing. When you shadow a speaker, you aren't just trying to nail the vowels, you are actually trying to match the pitch and the flow of your master track perfectly. You are learning the song of the language, not just the lyrics. When you speak in perfect lockstep, really chasing that melody, something incredible happens neurologically. While the academic research on this gets incredibly dense, the core takeaway is thrilling. You actually bypass your native language grammar rules. Shadowing at native speed leaves you literally no time to stop and translate in your head. It forces the state of deep listening. You're supplying complete native sentence models directly to your brain, which lets you store and retrieve them efficiently during real-life communication. You completely skip over that slow, conscious sentence construction phase. Now don't worry, you don't have to jump straight into the deep end on day one. You can adjust your training intensity, essentially picking your weight class in the mouth gym. There are 4 specific variations developed by researchers. Content shadowing is the standard one, repeating everything exactly. But prosodic shadowing is where it gets really interesting. You imitate only the rhythm and stress, completely ignoring the meaning. It's pure melody practice. Then there's silent shadowing, subvocalizing in your mind, which is absolutely perfect for practicing on your commute. And for the advanced athletes out there, there's paraphrasing, where you rephrase the content in your own words on the fly to maximize your cognitive load. So how do we actually put this into a practical session? Let's break down the blueprint to take you from stumbling over a script to pure intuitive autopilot. It's a clear 4-step ladder. Step 1, listen and read to grasp the context. Step 2, shadow with the script, using your eyes to help your ears match the sounds.
Step 3 is where the real magic happens: blind shadowing. You take the text away entirely and rely purely on your auditory reflexes. Finally, step 4, meaning integration. This is where you are shadowing blindly, matching the prosody perfectly, while simultaneously internalizing the meaning of exactly what you are saying. Of course, to do this effectively, you need a high-quality master track that's perfectly matched to your level. Think of this as choosing your sparring partner. Audiobooks are phenomenal for beginners because professional narrators speak incredibly clearly and just a bit slower. Conversational podcasts? Those capture the natural rhythm, the slang, and the everyday idioms you'll actually encounter in the real world. Prepping for a business environment? Shadow a TED Talk to master that formal pacing. And definitely don't forget modern AI-driven language apps. They are crucial because they provide real-time, personalized feedback on your accuracy. But how much time do you actually need to spend in the mouth gym to see results? Well, here is the golden rule: consistency over duration. Just 10 to 15 minutes of intense, lockstep tracking beats 2 hours of passive listening any day of the week. Remember, this is a physical workout for your articulators. Doing a highly focused 10-minute shadowing session every single day is going to build that critical muscle memory far faster than doing one massive, exhausting session on a Sunday afternoon. And if you're sitting there wondering, does this really pay off? The hard data is pretty astounding. A recent university study at Unimed took 2 groups of English learners. The control group used traditional methods and scored around 54 on their listening tests. The experimental group, who simply added shadowing to their routine, leaped to over 65. That is a statistically significant outperformance. And what's truly fascinating here is that shadowing is a speaking exercise, yet it resulted in a massive leap in listening comprehension. By processing sounds at natural speeds, your ear just becomes incredibly sharp. This brings us to a huge psychological barrier that shadowing completely shatters: the fear of speaking. As the renowned polyglot Benny Lewis reminds us, speaking from day one is the key to language learning. You simply cannot wait until you feel ready and perfectly armed with every single grammar rule. The act of speaking is the learning itself. Shadowing gives you a safe, low-pressure environment to speak out loud continuously. You don't have to invent the sentences, you just echo them, practicing success from the very first minute you start. So, we've covered the science, we've walked through the physical drills, and we've laid out the exact blueprint for reaching conversational autopilot. Language isn't just a subject to study, it's a physical skill you have to perform. So I'll leave you with this final thought. What master track will you step into the echo chamber with today? And are you ready to stop passively listening and finally own your voice?